Well, let me go over the overreach tyranny of Louisville Metro and what I've experienced in Louisville, being actually attacked by their color of law and alpha of police harassment. I live in the projects area by the graveyard. So they have the Reaper polices, basically the whole thing. And so they want to represent a place. And, they have all these false legends on purpose, using the scythe as an FL design to say so, almost like an independent conversion and defense with the Reaper stuff, but then they are, in fact, evil. So, by the graveyard, this district that I live in is Division 6, Beat 4. And I live off of Bardstown Road in Faganbush, which is coincidentally or not very similar to saying Beat 4. And then right across the street, and then to the right from me is the Moose Lodge. So that's like Louisville Metro. And that is exactly at the first degree in Southeast, which is 113. Okay, and then first degree, and then Division 6 again. And then the apartment that I live in is, there's 12 apartments, 1 to 12, and then there's a center 13th room boiler room. So basically, they have the FL design of the 6 and the 6, which they've been hitting the beast on. There are 3 areas of apartment and doing a bunch of martyr cons. Even though I'm an omnis eclectic, maybe they've been hitting the heretic scene on that, I don't know. But they've been doing afterlife murder business over the 1 to 12, and then the 13th room being the boiler room. And then that's that boiler room. Then the address I live at is 4602. So that's almost like Division 6 Beat 4 again. And then, so I think they're calling it afterlife murder business over the 1 to 12 and then 13 boiler room, 13M. So afterlife murder business. And what they did was, now this goes all the way back to where I live. I used to live across the street, actually. And that's why I moved here, because I knew the area. In a place called Mutual Terraces. And in Mutual Terraces, I moved in 2013. And I lived on at 219 El Dorado, the city of gold. And that neighborhood has 8 streets and a park in it with the Mutual bypass train that goes by the park. And it goes Alpha, Bonnie, Cary, Derby, El Dorado, and then Flamingo, and then Granville does like a loop around half of it. And then there's an 8th street called Reading. Okay, but I lived at 219 El Dorado. So, and it's pretty close to the graveyard where my family's buried, and I have a contract to be buried at. So anyway, they hit me. They started hitting me with the Reaper police there, the overreach, tyranny, color of law, police misconduct, doing the Alpha. Remember that First Street's Alpha and Mutual Terraces. So they did the police harassment, and basically I was doing drugs at the time, and they contacted my drug dealer and got him and they hit me using him. Now, he set up agent provocateurs at me, who ended up, and they did this in 2017. And now, I lived at 219, so the next door neighbor was 217. So they did it in October for 2017. And they hit me with Dirty Drea, Jason, Tavia, Pat, and Chris for Donald John Trump, President, Commander-in-Chief. And I didn't realize they were hitting me. And I didn't realize the name connection at the time of these people, who they set it up where Chris, who was actually, it was set up by a different Chris, but then this Chris is on the scene. And anyway, the first Chris, because there were two Chris's, set me, I was driving him around, and that's where he introduced me to Tavia. We picked her up because she needed a ride. And then the three of us started doing drugs. And then and then he dropped off the scene. So I started doing drugs with Tavia. And then a few weeks into her and I hanging out, almost a month, she told me her husband's in jail. Okay, now his name is Jason Markham. And then I was like, oh, damn, I don't mess with, married women here. But we hadn't done anything sexually. We were just doing drugs. So anyway, so I'm like, I don't want to talk and this and that because you got a husband. So a month goes by, and she calls me up. And she said, my husband got home from jail, and he wants to start a new life, and he's divorcing me. And then the kids have a lawsuit on her to get divorced over neglect and abuse. Okay, so she wants to move into my place, and I live alone. So I said, yeah, it's fine. You can get I had helped her get a job at Frisch's. And so, anyway, she moves in. And then she was dating Chris at the time. I would always see Chris when I was hanging out with her. So then Chris moved in. Okay, I had 3 bedrooms anyway. So that's how they set it up. But this thing and that, I find out that Tavia is over my bathroom colors. Okay. In 2013, when my parents wanted to, they threw in about $30,000 to fix up the house for me, because it was my Uncle Dale's house, and he left it to my mom in a will, and she was renting it to people. And they gave them a year's notice. I was staying in apartments and stuff. And so then they threw $30,000 on it to fix it up. They said, what color you want us to paint it? And I said, I want to do a neutral and rainbow color theme. So then so the green went on the outside. They're supposed to do the other 6 colors of the rainbow on the inside. But for some reason, they painted the bathroom turquoise where I requested it as painted violet. And then that's where Tavia came in. That's her name. Turquoise violet. And she had flaming red-orange hair. And she was a Bloody Mary Maryland, D.C. hit. And I didn't know. Okay. And she was in the heroin big time. And so, this thing and that, and then on the scene, she's dating Pat and also Chris. And still, her and I never did anything sexually. But, so, they get it to where they hit me on Bonnie Street, where Pat has a red Mustang. And remember, Pat is also named after the bathroom colors, and he's the boogeyman of it. His name is painted turquoise Pat. Okay, so they hit me with Tavia and Pat on Bonnie Street with Pat's red Mustang over bathroom. And then the Bloody Mary scene. And that's where they arrested me in 2017. Okay, there's that. And then, so I spent 100 days in jail, and I come back. I had my dad evict everybody. Because they were like pirates, too. They were like ambiguous junkies on the black market. And Tavia's a real evil person. And she is also representing the Little Mermaid. Her initials are TLM. And also her middle name is Lynn, and they stole over all my He-Men over Evil Lynn. They ended up stealing everything in my house. I think over Davy Jones' trident and Davy Jones' locker, and where they got me locked up and stole everything. And then they left a can of violet paint over the bathroom colors. Okay. Now, my mom was dying of cancer at the time. And during the time Tavia lived there, she did die of stomach cancer. She had stomach cancer for about 5 or 6 years. So that was during the time my mother died. Okay. And then, so I got out of jail and everything. I had them evicted. And I'm living alone again. I'm starting to do my thing. And then they start moving people in at me. They moved in Ben and Ken. Now, Ben he moved into the house next door at 221. And he's got a big red truck, and his wife he's with, it looks like me and Tavia as a female. And then she's also got the red hair. And their house, was facing, you're facing the house is to the left, so the right if I'm facing out of 219. But across the street into a caddy corner, a fire hydrant aims at my door. And she used to park her car in front of that for the first part of the female entrapment doppelganger females of Division 6. Overreach, rape, bait. Okay, and then 3 houses down, my house, my next door neighbor, and then the next door neighbor there at 215, they moved in Ken. And Ken had the other female doppelganger. And the female entrapment of it was the fire hydrant then my backyard had an easeway in the corner that led to Ken's, past the house next door. So it was fire hydrant, easeway, female entrapment, where then they started attacking. And then they also started doing the Reading 8th Street harassment rebbing with negative cars and such. So, and then Ben worked for LG&E, and like they lit my place up somehow. And then had the revving cars. And then I noticed the next door neighbor at 217, they're like everybody else's satellite aims in a certain direction, and theirs is opposite, aiming right at my home. So it has like TV with it, like AI intervention with all that. And they do that fucking bullshit. And this goes on and on and on. With the female doppelganger, rape bait, bride, husband, hitman bullshit of evil marriage characters and Bloody Mary boogeyman, bridesmaid best man. And so anyway, at this time, my dad either committed suicide or they murdered him and framed his murder for suicide. So, and this is in 2020. So the house is in my dad's name, and I have to split everything with my sister. So I had to sell the house. So this thing and that, I moved to some apartments, Plainview Apartments. We had tons of Arabs over there, all getting in my way on purpose. And then I ended up buying a house with the inheritance money at a place called Belmar in Camp Taylor. Okay? And guess what? All the way out, this is more towards downtown than the East End, but it's still way in the East End. But Camp Taylor, I didn't know, is a Christian community where there's 4 churches. And Belmar's on a hill. And now and that district is still under District 6 Beat 4. We'll continue with part 2.